Philippines' sincerest appreciation to the co-chairs of the Roundtable, Egypt and Zambia, to the Roundtable Rapporteur Indonesia, and to the distinguished panelists and resource persons for this panel. Allow me also to give special thanks to the ICMPD for leading the drafting of the excellent background paper and for the Moroccan hospitality as this year's host of our meeting. We appreciate also the excellent support that the GFMD support unit provided us as we co-chair this roundtable. Excellencies, colleagues, the number of international migrants worldwide continues to grow rapidly in the recent years, reaching 258 million in 2017, up from 220 million in 2010 and 173 million in 2000. Over 60% of all international migrants live in Asia, and Europe around 78 million, various bilateral, regional, and multilateral dialogues and negotiated agreements aimed at protecting migrants and ensuring decent living and working conditions. At the regional level, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, of which Philippines is a member state, has a highly diverse area in terms of migration, being composed of countries of origin, transit, and destination. Despite differences in national priorities, ASEAN member states have common aspirations, including two, and that is to continuously develop a coordinated and possibly integrated migration policies. As such, the ASEAN has developed several key mobility and migrant worker initiatives. One of the most important ASEAN initiatives is the Mutual Recognition Agreement. The MRAs facilitate trade in services by mutual recognition of authorization, licensing, or certification of professional service suppliers obtained in one ASEAN member state by other ASEAN member states. The goal of the MRA is to facilitate the flow of foreign professionals, taking into account relevant domestic regulations and market demand. Currently, MRAs in 7 professional services have been concluded and signed by the ASEAN economic ministers. These are the MRA in Engineering Services, MRA in Architectural Services, Framework Agreement for the Mutual Recognition of Surveying Qualifications, MRA in Nursing Services, MRA in Medical Practitioners, MRA in Dental Practitioners, and MRA Framework on Accountancy Services. Another initiative is the Framework Arrangement for the Mutual Recognition of Qualifications, which is a common reference framework that enables comparisons of educational qualifications across participating ASEAN member states. By harmonizing educational qualifications, the competitiveness of professionals in Southeast Asia, including that of Filipino professionals, is promoted. Together with the ASEAN Mutual Recognition Arrangements, advances the mobility of ASEAN professionals in the region. Complementing the ASEAN Mutual Recognition Agreements and Qualification Reference Framework is the 2017 ASEAN Consensus on the Protection and Promotion of Rights of Migrants. At the 31st ASEAN Summit in Manila in November 2017, the ASEAN leaders signed the ASEAN Consensus, which is considered as one of the landmark documents during the Philippines' chairpersonship of ASEAN in 2017. The ASEAN Consensus manifested ASEAN's fulfillment of its goal to advocate the protection of the thousands of migrant workers and their families in the region. This document is a follow-up document to the Cebu Declaration on the Protection and Promotion of the Rights of Migrant Workers, also signed by ASEAN leaders in Cebu, Philippines in 2007, and which committed ASEAN to promote decent, humane, productive, dignified, and remunerative employment for migrant workers, provide human resource development programs, curb or prevent human smuggling and trafficking in persons, and enhance policies and programs on migrant workers. The ASEAN Consensus provides ASEAN migrant workers with a regional document which, among others, reiterates the fundamental rights of migrant workers, including, first, possession of their own passports and original government-issued work and personal documents, visitation by the family members, filing of grievances with relevant authorities, or seeking of assistance from respective embassies, consulates, or missions to access information on matters pertaining to their employment. It also calls for the provision of access to justice and protection during the recruitment process, humane treatment, fair and appropriate remuneration and benefits allows the joining of trade unions and associations and access to adequate medical and healthcare. The ASEAN has come a long way in facilitating labor mobility, while the efforts are initiated by ASEAN member states, governments, ensuring their implementation will rest on the private sector, particularly in the work of professional and industry associations. It is in this regard that the principle of shared responsibility and cooperation between the governments and the other stakeholders as enshrined in the Global Compact on Migration are indispensable. With regard to policy coherence, migration and development, the Philippine government is currently aligning all its migration-related policies, services, and programs to the principles and objectives of the GCM. Recently in November, the Philippines convened an intergovernmental agency experts workshop that consolidated migration-related policies, programs, and activities of various agencies, identified its gaps and challenges, and crafted an integrated, coherent plan of action to implement Philippines' commitments to the GCM and to mainstream the GCM objectives within the mandates of their respective offices. The workshop also concluded that cooperation in the local level is a vital element for the implementation of the GCM and for the creation of a coherent policy design. The Philippines is currently crafting the National Implementation Plan of the GCM. This plan is anchored to the country's development plan, which gives deliberate attention to special circumstances of overseas Filipinos and their families and empowers them towards inclusive and sustainable development. Your Excellencies, the Philippines is very serious in the implementation of the Global Compact on Migration. In all our engagements, our focus will always be for the benefit of our migrants as well as the families and communities they belong to. Implementation demands collaboration and cooperation. And as a country of origin, the Philippines migration governance framework will not be successful without strong regional ties and close intergovernmental level of cooperation. I look forward to an interactive and production dialogue with you. Thank you very much and good afternoon.
Hello. Thank you very much, Undersecretary.
Analizando.
Good afternoon again. I'd like to respond to the questions of the lady from Morocco and the gentleman from Algeria. Coming from Asia, I think one of the peculiarity of Asia is its diversity. That's why we have a sub-regional organization, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and we came up with a consensus document on migration. Of course, like being realistic, consensus documents are really the middle ground because in Southeast Asia, these are countries of origin, destination, and also of transit. So the Philippines, as many of you might know, is very passionate when it comes to migration. We always say that we provide the gold standard for the protection of our migrants. However, no matter how hard we lobby with some of our neighbors also, we also have to respect their sovereignty. And of course, for you to be able to come up with a document, it's only just a benchmark. It's a start where everyone is comfortable, and you have to really meet where everyone is comfortable with to be able to move the process further. But having said that, for the Philippines, I think we are more effective in bilateral negotiations because we realize we're a country of origin. Our countries of destination have different cultures and needs, and also we have different kinds of migrants who come to different parts of the world. For example, in Middle East, many of our migrants are household domestic workers. So we deal differently with the Middle East countries in the same way that we deal differently with the United States, where we have almost 4 million migrants in that country alone. By the way, historically, the Philippines was a former colony of the US. That's why it was the first country of destination for most Filipinos, because no matter how far they are from us, it's because it's, it's the only country we knew during that time. But at the moment, I think you just have to grab what you can get. In some instances, I think the Philippines had a Marawi siege. Were we never thought we would be a victim of terrorism, but we were a victim of terrorism, and we realized that we also had foreign fighters, and we always thought we are the country of origin but never of destination. And that's why we partner with all other countries in the world to be able to help us to deal with the scourge of terrorism. But of course, our country is still open, but we are just more cautious considering the security of implications of the entry. But unfortunately, for the mobility, it's double-edged also for us, because when we enter when there are countries, for example, in Morocco, where visa is not required, it becomes a jump-off point for trafficking also for our citizens. A lot of people would ask me, do you want some countries to be visa-free in the Middle East? I would always say no, because it's going to create a lot of problems. I've been repatriating thousands of Filipinos every year. So, and sometimes those are safeguards also for a country of origin like us to be able to protect our citizens. So, everything is a double-edged thing, and we try our best, of course, as a country of origin, to give the best protection to our citizens. But nothing beats, of course, international cooperation. And while we think that it's really best to have a regional cooperation for Asia, but because of a diversity of Asia, we are going for a sub-regional, and for more particular, we go to bilateral relations.
Thank you very much. Madam Milton.
Good afternoon again. I was heading the Philippine delegation in the GCM negotiations, and I think I'd like to speak from the perspective of the Philippines, how we see the GCM. It's a morality document. It is the minimum standard of how migrants should be treated, and it's both a human rights and a development document. We know that not everyone's very happy with it. Some people would want more, and those who chose not to adapt and have already said that they're not adopting, they wanted less. But at the end of the day, it's as good as it gets. If we don't adopt now, then we will not be back to where we were before. We will be really regressing from where we were, and you're just going to say that you can treat migrants in any way you want. As a country of origin, we've been very aggressive in dealing with our countries of destination. And as many of you might have known, early in the year, the Philippines had a crisis with one of countries of destination, and that's the time that our president said that the Filipino is no slave to anyone, anywhere and everywhere. And that was the time, the history of the Philippines, that we went all out against kafala. It was something that's not usually said in international events, but that's one thing that we really made sure that some provisions of the GCM will address. And to further address it, we are partnering with one of our countries of destination, which is Bahrain, in regularizing our undocumented, or these workers are irregular workers. And so far, we have more than 2,000 of them, and we are at more than 500 already. And this is the affirmative action on the part of the Philippines, because they have a flexi visa system, and the Philippines really put some money to buy the visa for our irregular workers, because they do not want to go home and actually pay for the first 2-month payment. In fact, we have a side event on Saturday, and we're inviting you to come at 1 o'clock to talk about our partnership with them. But it is already, we are proud that it's a child of the GCM. It's the an international partnership. It's an international cooperation. It's the first time that the Philippines is doing this. But we personally feel that if you don't take it to the next step forward, and if we wait for the rest of our neighbors to be where we are at, then some of our people will be in a very vulnerable positions. So in this case, I think the GCM is like a benchmark document for future regional cooperations or regional agreements. But at the end of the day, we also realize that even if you do not have a bilateral agreement with a country of destination, you can move things forward. By the way, we do not have a labor agreement with Bahrain. We do not have also a bilateral agreement with them. But we personally feel that if there's something that's available, and if the governments agree, then you can move things forward. And we are already fulfilling the objectives 5, 6, and 23 of the GCM even before its adoption. So that's what we can contribute. Well, they always say that hope becomes a virtue when everything seems hopeless. So at this point in time, from a country of origin, we will push, we will do whatever, we will engage to be able to protect our people around the world.
I'll give the opportunity.